We are back. It's the Joe Holka Show presented by Line Movement. Time to walk through some Week 14 matchups, talking through the three most interesting games of the week from a fantasy perspective, our picks against the spread for each. I say our because I'm not alone, of course. Rich Hribar is with us, our weekly guest on the Joe Holka Show, author of the worksheet at sharpfootballanalysis.com. Rich Hribar, how was your Week 13, man? I'm just saying it feels downhill after Thanksgiving a little bit, but Week 14 still doesn't really roll off the tongue the way it should. It's flown by.
Yeah, this is kind of like the fantasy playoffs for like the season-long players. You know, we had FFPC finals, regular season finals, and now we're in the big dance. But this is kind of like the nitty-gritty. It's kind of like the 3-week spread here. And, you know, hopefully a lot of people that didn't make their leagues are still playing DFS. And, you know, are focusing on winning some holiday cash still before Christmas because there's still money to be had in these streets.
Yeah, if anyone's just been getting that notification, like you've hit that bell, you've subscribed, all that stuff, whatever, if you're just getting that and your season's over from a season-long perspective and you were kind of here just getting picking our brains on that sort of stuff, like come over to the DFS waters. Like the water's fine. There's still plenty of the time to get into DFS for sure. We got playoff slates, which are some of the best slates of the year. Now we're doing Showdown Breakdown every Thursday at 7 p.m. with Peter Overzet over on Overzet's channel for Monday Night Football. Just like I'm not doing enough shows, Reeves, I had to add a couple to my plate. This one is one of my favorite ones of the week, though, for sure, because we're focusing on some of the games that could go a little bit under the radar and also some that people will definitely be on because they're being projected for a ton of points by Vegas right now. But doing a little bit of a bets against the spread angle, people like that last week. So we'll do our best to get through these all as quickly and efficiently as possible, man. So let's jump into it. Game number 1, Minnesota at Tampa Bay. It's a 51.5 point over under. The Bucs are a 6.5 point home favorite per blitzbet.eu. Of course, the third highest team total third highest over under on the main slate. Not a ton from the sharps so far in this game overall. Tampa Bay just getting 64% of the money. But what were your thoughts on this one overall, Reeves? Fantasy, betting, all that stuff. This is going to be a really popular game to get right.
Yeah, I mean, anytime we've got the Bucs, we got Tom Brady coming out of a bye, which is, a narrative in itself. But this Vikings defense is pretty deplorable. We've kind of been picking them on them all year. And what has shifted for the Vikings, especially over the past month, is that their passing game is really starting to click. And, we've kind of talked about them in some leverage spots. This is a week where they're probably not a leverage spot. I don't know if a lot of people are going to be paying up for Dalvin Cook, the big bad Tampa Bay run defense stigma. And this is a pass funnel situation. But the thing about this Bucs game is ever since they've shut down Aaron Rodgers in kind of that 1 week when there's only 2 4:00 games and they just shut him down and everyone is watching, the Bucs defensive stigma has not lived up to that week. I mean, you look at since that game, they have allowed 5.8 yards per play. That's 26th in the NFL. They've allowed 7 yards per pass play. That is also 26th in the NFL. They were second in the NFL before that, up into that Packers game. So a lot of people they've rode that wave a lot, that their defense is to be kind of avoided, and their defense hasn't been good since that Packers game. And we got Kirk Cousins, who the past month is, coming off of 292, 314, 307, 305. His past 4 games, 11 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. We can really kind of focus on this passing game here to not be a leverage spot, but to be a spot to kind of just play naturally from a natural pass funnel. But we know with the Vikings, we've talked about them for multiple weeks on this show, who to play, and they've got a concentrated target tree. Not so easy on the Bucs side. We've got Brady. He's had his ups and downs this season, but he's been a top 10 scorer in 4 of his past 6 games. He's thrown multiple touchdowns in 6 of his past 7 games. We know we can play Brady here. Minnesota's been a little bit better, but then when you look at their slate since week 8, they faced Matthew Stafford in a game he left early, Nick Foles, Andy Dalton, Teddy Bridgewater, Mike Glennon. They haven't really been challenged, since week 8, and they're going to get a challenge here out of this bye against the passing game for the Bucs. But who can we pair Brady with? It's always a conundrum. We know where the touchdown equity lies. It lies with Mike Evans. The problem with Mike Evans is that he's going to score touchdowns, and that's really all you're going to get. He scored a touchdown in 9 of his 12 games. He's averaging a career low 51.1 yards per game receiving, just 12.8 yards per reception. That's also a career low. But the volume is starting to kind of trickle his way. He has at least 9 targets in each of his past 3 games. So the targets are starting to get there. Chris Godwin had some pins removed from his finger early in this week. We'll see, how that affects his practice time. I would assume that he'll be available, but keep a not to use a pun, but you could keep a pin in that to see if he's going to be back. He has at least 5 receptions in 7 games, 6 or more in each of his past 3. He hasn't at the ceiling he had last year, but he's getting a lot of volume and he's been useful. And this Antonio Brown wild card that we just can't figure out if he's going to pop or not with all these air yards he gets. But he hasn't gone over 69, a not nice 69 yards yet in a game this season. And we've also got Gronk, man. Gronk's kind of back. I mean, it's not like old Gronk, but like he's starting to make some plays coming off of his first 100-yard game since week 14 of 2018 season, before that bye. Minnesota's 31st in yards per target allowed to tight ends. And, Eric Kendricks picked up a little injury that we have to monitor and see if he's going to play. But overall, this looks like a game that looks like it has potential to be really high scoring and have some really volume through the air. I know I didn't mention Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette because we like to keep our sanity here on the show.
Yeah, Reeves, tons of puns there, tons of great information for sure. So we appreciate that. Yeah, I think the one thing that's always been appealing about the Vikings is we know what we're getting there. We know who to go to now that Thielen's back. Like, it was nice kind of getting them at lower ownership for a couple of weeks. Don't think that that's going to happen this week. So totally with you on that one. You mentioned Rob Gronkowski. Sigmund Bloom talked about him on the 3 studs, 3 duds segment earlier this week as a guy that we could be going to at the tight end position. Obviously, that injury to the Minnesota defense definitely is one to monitor throughout the week if you want to be on Gronkowski at 4,800. The Evans thing is one that has just kind of buried me this year overall because he keeps he doesn't really bury me in the fact that I feel like I should play him, but playing these other Tampa Bay guys not getting the touchdowns is just brutal at times, right? So Brady is just so much harder to stack. Him actually getting there with 2 or 3 of his weapons, it seems almost a little bit too spread out at times overall. So this is a really interesting game. Justin Jefferson more expensive than Adam Thielen, but both of these guys in the top 10 in weighted opportunity. Justin Jefferson still very high up there in yards per out run, that sort of thing. So definitely an interesting game overall. I think that you kind of hit on it with the defense of Tampa Bay. This used to be one that we were kind of fearing throughout most of the beginning of the season, and then that one primetime game and everything just kind of shifts a little bit. So I think that Tampa Bay is probably the right side here overall. I don't really have any other, takes on the side. I think that this is one that could definitely go over the total. But which side do you like here?
Yeah, I think the best bet on the board is probably the Bucks team total. If you involve that, I think the Bucks team total is something I definitely look for them to put up over 30 points in this game. And if you say that, well, if you're laying less than a full touchdown, you've got a chance there. I would lean, Bucks team total, the over before I touch the line. And if you force me to take a side, I think that probably 6.5 is probably good to probably cover if you're taking the Vikings just to keep it close. I think they're gonna be able to throw the football in this game, but I think Bucks team total is the best bet.
Love it. Game number 2, Tennessee at Jacksonville. It's a 52.5 point over under. The Titans are a -7.5 point road favorite per blitzbet.eu. Second highest total on the main slate. Does seem like the sharps are going to be on Tennessee here. 77% of the money, only 58% of the betting tickets as of right now on blitzbet.eu. So division unders, I think, are somewhat interesting in terms of the total, but man, Tennessee against this Jacksonville team, it definitely feels like they're going to be able to put some points on the board.
Well, both of these defense are a travesty. We talked about this a little bit last week when we talked about the Browns and Titans having the highest game total, and it's 2 run heavy teams. So we're thinking, and that game has 79 total points. Granted, it goes off the rails there in the second half, but the Browns had 38 at halftime. Both these defenses are just a train wreck, and that's why you see that this game kind of endearing itself to DFS. Ryan Tannehill has been really good. He's kind of righted the ship. There's a lull there in the middle of the season, right around that Bengals game. It's all right, is the regression really hitting for Ryan Tannehill? Is he hitting a wall? And he's come back and he's had 8.4, 10 yards, and 8.6 yards per pass attempt the past 3 games. Jacksonville, we talked about them, kind of a few times in the show. They're 29th in passing points allowed per game. The great thing about Tannehill is that he can, even if the volume gets reduced, because it will. He threw a season high 45 passes last week because they were down 38-3 at halftime. But the efficiency can sustain itself on a volume reduction here because the Jaguars are so bad. CJ Henderson's still out. DJ Hayden's still out. We have to wait on Sidney Jones. But he's missed the past 3 games. This defense, their secondary is just so beat up They've allowed a touchdown to the opposing wide receiver 1 in 4 straight games. They've allowed a pair of wide receiver teammates to have 15 or more PPR points in 4 of their past 5 games. They just don't have the bodies in the back end, and they don't rush the quarterback. They're last in the NFL in sacks. So, I mean, I think you can still go back, and you can obviously get leverage here because I think Derrick Henry will be popular again. This is a Derrick Henry week. I think people look at them. Against this Jaguars defense that has allowed 140 rushing yards and 5.2 yards per carry to running backs over the past 3 games. They did kind of thwart Derrick Henry when they played earlier in the season, 84 yards on 25 touches. I think we talked about it earlier on the show, but this is that week. It was the Derrick Henry week, and should we play him? Should we not? But that was the first week last week where he ran into like game script that affected his touches. He only had 16 touches, season low. The Jaguars have led for just 9.6% of their offensive plays. That game script's going to be flipped this week. So the leverage play is still, I think, to get this Tennessee passing game. I really regret on this show, I saw in the chat someone bring up that, I was flying through these games and sometimes I don't hit everything. And I kind of bypassed Corey Davis. And Corey Davis was literally like the only dude I got right in tournaments last week. Yeah. But you look at him now, 8 games played with A.J. Brown this season. He has more targets, more receptions, and more yards than A.J. Brown so far this season. He just lacks a little bit of the touchdowns. He did get that one last week, but A.J. Brown, we've talked about, I think when I was going in depth on him last week, is he's this guy that's getting there every week on just like 4 catches every week, but then they go for a touchdown and he's breaking all these tackles and these long touchdowns and they stick out our mind. But Corey Davis has been, just an excellent safe floor player, and now we've seen him have some ceiling weeks playing next to a true alpha. And we talked about the Jaguars, 15 more PPR points to a pair of receivers in 4 of their past 5 games. So those guys are playable. On the other side, James Robinson, it's just ho-hum with James Robinson. He doesn't do anything like amazing. Like you never see him like in the highlights breaking off like a 35-yard like run where he breaks all these tackles. But what he does is he stacks touches and he stacks yards every single week. He had another 24 touches, 108 yards last week. He's at least 94 total yards in 6 straight games. He's now 137 total yards shy of the all-time record for an undrafted rookie running back. He might get it this game because he had 120 total yards when these teams played in week 2, and that was a much healthier Tennessee defense, and they are just really struggling here this past month. So this is a game too, I believe, can pop in a lot of directions. They are really just grasping on the back end too. I mean, Malcolm Butler's been playing, but like they're giving up just chunk plays, wide receivers. We've seen every round Browns wide receiver kind of get in the mix last week. The Jaguars wide receivers are a little tougher to kind of nail down because, Colin Johnson's had 2 good weeks in a row, but they've revolved around injury. Shark didn't play 2 weeks ago. Then it snapped spike when Chenault doesn't play the second half last week. Keelan Cole played like his fewest snaps since week 2. And then DJ Shark, man, just keeps running these great matchups, but he can't get there. I mean, he's still getting high leverage targets. So if you watch that game last week, because I ran him in some stacks with the Vikings guys, I mean, Glennon missed him like 3 or 4 times, especially that last interception in overtime. He's wide open and Glennon can't hit him. So you're going to have to deal with that if you try to run Shark back. But Shark's price is like dirt cheap right now. If you do want to wade into those waters of volatility, I mean, they're allowing 16.7 points per game to opposing wide receiver 1s. Tennessee is. That's 24th in the league. If you can stomach, some of that volatility with Shark.
Yeah, 5,300 is a great price for him. I'm with you. The running backs are probably going to be really popular in this game overall, so maybe going to the passing game on the Tennessee side makes sense. Again, it feels like Tennessee always feels like a little bit of the leverage option. Corey Davis, this is something we talked about earlier in the week with Jake Seeley. Like we see these big games from players like this, and then like they're basically unowned, and then the next week they're unowned again because people get to see them. They're like, that's not going to happen again. I can't play Corey Davis. I'm not going to chase Corey Davis. And then we see it with someone like Baker Mayfield last week, does it again at low ownership. So like sometimes like just being like not necessarily early, but being there when people just think things are flukes in DFS at least is an interesting strategy. So let's touch on this last game. This is one that it's a little bit more under the radar, but I really like it overall. Atlanta at the LA Chargers, 48.5 point over under. Chargers are a +2.5 point home underdog per blitzbet.eu. The game total is outside that top tier, like I said, but the sharps appear to be on Atlanta early in the week. A ton of sharp action on the over as well. 87% of the money is on the over in this game. So Reeves, tell us why you like this game this week.
Yeah, I mean, sharps are on them because if you just bet either on or against the Chargers this year, you know how it's gone. Yep. So people are riding that way. But anytime you have a team just get boat race the way the Chargers did, like people kind of get the EBGBs and they want to run away. You see a team catch a 45-0 loss at home, and the coach start quoting Pearl Harbor references out there in these streets. People start to get a little up in arms. But when you look at Justin Herbert's season now, so Justin Herbert has had his 2 worst games against who? Bill Belichick. He was the 30th rookie quarterback to face Bill Belichick. Only 7 guys have thrown multiple touchdowns as rookies against Bill Belichick. Only 1 has thrown more than 2 passing touchdowns. It was Russell Wilson. So he's got a lot of rookie pelts on his wall. But go back 2 weeks ago, who else did he struggle against? Brian Flores, under that same tree, the defensive mind. So a lot of borrowing, I think, from the schematically that what gave Justin Herbert trouble. We're probably already seeing just a little bit of natural regression too for Herbert. I mean, he ran so hot his first 9 games. He was the highest scoring quarterback basically through 9 games. There's going to be some recoil there. Sometimes in the NFL, with it being such a small sample size inherently for a season, you don't get that in the same season, but sometimes you do. And Herbert's kind of come back to the pack a little bit here these past 3 weeks. But this Atlanta defense is still one to pick on. I know that they kind of shut down Derek Carr a couple weeks ago, but we've seen them struggle against Taysom Hill, and not just Taysom Hill's rushing. I mean, the first game Taysom Hill throws for 10 yards per pass attempt. Because this is their last 3 games. They've had 2 Taysom Hill games sandwiched around that Derek Carr game. And then last week, Taysom Hill throws 2 touchdowns, the first 2 of his career, and then to add on to that rushing. But we've been picking on Atlanta the whole season. A lot of their, big play stuff still exists under Raheem Morris. Their yards per play still exists. They've just kind of stopped prevented touchdowns at a lower rate. That's really it, but they're still bad against the pass. So this could be a bounce back spot for Herbert when everyone kind of was riding the wave, and now they've kind of crashed and burned, especially last week. And we've got Keenan Allen in this great spot. I mean, even come down to with Herbert, his volume isn't going anywhere. He's still at double-digit targets in each of his past 3 games. He's at 9 of his past 10 games played. He's at double-digit targets. Atlanta's 26th in points allowed to opposing wide receiver ones. He's got that volume. People aren't going to be on him really because they've paid up for him a couple weeks in a row probably. This could be a Big Mike game. I mean, he's another one of those guys like you know what you're getting into when you click Big Mike's name, you know what you're getting into. But Atlanta's allowed a league high 4.1 receptions per game of 20 or more yards. So it could be kind of a week to get back on that spike, passing game of the Chargers. Obviously Austin Eckler is still involved there too. It looks like Kalen Balazs back last week inherited the Josh Kelly role. Josh Kelly only played 2 snaps with Eckler still playing his role. And on the Falcons side, like it's pretty cut and dry like the Vikings. I mean, there's 2 guys to play. Nice. We've got Calvin Ridley and we've got Julio Jones. Julio said that he felt good last week and he played a season high 94% of the snaps. It was the most he played all season. He caught 6 of 10 targets for 94 yards. While we've kind of to deal with this on and off hamstring, in the 7 games that Julio Jones has made it through, he's had 1 week lower than a wide receiver 24. And he's averaging 6.4 catches for 100 yards in those games. He's still being productive. So kind of like the Minnesota passing game, we've got something similar here with this Falcons, where both guys are kind of expensive, but we know where the ball is going.
Yeah, and what's nice too is Matt Ryan just 5,700. I love the idea of Ryan just double stack with Julio and Ridley. You can even bring it back with a guy like Austin Eckler, who I'm definitely not scared to go back to at 7K after he just kind of failed for a lot of people at chalk. We'll see what his ownership ends up, but if he's like 15 to 20%, I want to be all over that. Love this game overall, Reeves. So from a betting perspective, I love the over. Do you have a side that you like on this one?
Yeah, I like the over. And listen, I am never betting on the Chargers again for the rest of 2020. If I could just make it through 2020 without betting on the Chargers, they've taken so much of my money. I'm just not going to do it.
Love it, man. Rich Hribar, everyone. Make sure you follow him on Twitter. He's at Lord Reeves. I'm sure most of you are already. But Reeves, let everyone know what you have going on outside of the Joe Holka Show throughout the week, and we'll get you out of here.
Yeah, sharpfootballanalysis.com, where you can find the worksheet, anything else I put out. I know it's playoff time, so if you want to get over there and kind of square up your lineups this week or DFS lineups, if you're just coming into the DFS, kind of field because your team's lost, you'll definitely check that out. Sharp Angles with Dan Pizzuta and Cleve TA. And then every Wednesday, 3:15, the Joe Holka Show.
Love it, man. Love how you tee that up at the end every time too. All right, man. Best of luck in week 14. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, guys.